we're back in Buzz City after a week of road trips and holiday festivities as we look to take on the Brooklyn Nets for a revenge game tonight. And we also get to honor the legendary voice of the Hornets, Steve Martin. The first 10,000 of you guys through the doors of Spectrum Center get one of these. I'm Erin Pitzenberger for Hornets.com. That's Matt Rachinsky, and this is the HornetsFanshop.com pregame show. All right, first and foremost, we have a game day special. What you got?
Always a game day special on HornetsFanshop.com. What we've got right now is it's the clearance sale that's going on right now. So if there was something you wanted, didn't get, now's your chance to pick it up and probably get a break on it because there's all kinds of stuff that's been discounted. And the biggest thing is 25% off all Jordan brand merchandise. That's always a hot ticket. I know I love the Jordan brand merch. I know you do too. So make sure you guys get on there. And maybe if you want to send us a belated Christmas present, we'll take it.
Oh, absolutely. I'll take it. Anything you guys got. If you need to re-gift something or you just don't feel like going back to return it, Spectrum Center.
Yeah, there we go.
Address to us. Well, I'm excited to be back home. It seems like, road trips lately have kind of been our Achilles heel. The Boston game on Sunday, it was good up until the second quarter, and then we had that crazy deficit at halftime. What did you think of that game?
Yeah, the wheels just kind of fell off in the second quarter. To allow 39 points to Boston, it's you can't do that to a team that's that good on their home court. Kemba and Kyrie put on a show in the first quarter. The two of those guys going back and forth. It was a great look and start to the game. We figured things would be kind of shaping up that way and could be a great matchup. But Boston just kind of took off in the second quarter. We had a tough time matching up with them defensively. And once a team like that gets hot going at home, it's tough to stop them, and we just had that difficulty.
Yeah, and then we got home, enjoyed the holidays for a little bit, and then hopped back on the plane and headed right back up north to Barclays Center to take on the Nets. And if you're not a fan of the Nets or the Hornets, then it was a great game to watch. If you're LeBron James, according to him, it was a great game to watch. But if you're a Hornets fan, my fists were clenched the entire time. It was the most frustrating double overtime loss. These guys, hard-fought battle, but just some costly mistakes down the stretch. What'd you think of that game?
Yeah, and it was tough because you said your fists were clenched the entire time. You're sitting there, and it's from the third quarter on. It just wasn't the last couple minutes of the game that were frustrating. It was a continuous back-and-forth affair. And every time we hit a big shot, they'd come down and hit a big shot. Every time we'd get a great defensive stop, they do the same. It's like these teams were mirror images of each other, which shows in the standings right now. We're just a couple of games separated. This is going to be another important game tonight. But, to see things shape up the way they did at the end of regulation when you feel like you really got a chance. I'm not sure if Kemba missed that second free throw on purpose or not. We'll probably never really know. But when they didn't have any timeouts left, they would have had to go the length of the court in like 1.6 seconds. It was a great opportunity to steal a win right there on the road. Unfortunately, we had a tough fall. DeMarre Carroll goes to the line. Thankfully, he only hits one of three because he got 3 shots after the lane violation. Works out. You go to overtime, holding your breath, saying, okay, let's try and steal this one now. Tony Parker can't hit on the big shot at the end of the first overtime. Second overtime, just kind of all wound up, and things did not work out and go in our favor. It was just a disappointing loss.
Very disappointing, yeah. And I know going into tonight, we're going to really have to keep an eye on Spencer Dinwiddie, who hit a career-high 37 points off the bench on Wednesday. Who's going to have to stop him?
It's going to have to boil down to a combination of maybe Kemba Walker. Tony Parker might have to play a little bit better and get his defensive legs underneath him against this guy. MKG, you might see a guy like MKG kind of come off the bench to match up with a Spencer Dinwiddie, especially if he comes out as hot as he was last game. And make no mistake about it, fans, he scored 37 points, but this just wasn't one of those off-the-wall 37-point games. It was his career high, but this guy has been playing hot for the Nets as of late, averaging 22 points in his last 5 games. He's their leading scorer on this team. Might be the only leading scorer in the NBA coming off a bench for a team. So he's going to continue to play this way. He's going to look to get his shots up tonight here in Spectrum Center. Hopefully these guys can shut him down.
Yeah, no question. And then with that UConn connection of Kemba Walker and Jeremy Lamb, they combined for 66 points on Wednesday. So I'm really looking for big games out of both of them tonight.
Yeah, when you say 66, sometimes you think maybe Kemba had a 42-point night and then Jeremy Lamb might have had 24. No, it was 35-31. To see both those guys committed the way they were to taking the ball and dominating offensively, it was great to see because, Jeremy's going to have to continue to do that throughout the season. We saw what the Nets' game plan was. It was to blitz Kemba Walker, get as many guys in his face, make it as difficult for him as possible. If that's happening, you need another guy to kind of step up and take control. Jeremy Lamb has done that. I've loved seeing his progression this season. He continues to just get after it, but when your captain scores 35, I think he's going to come out tonight looking to score a little more.
Right, that was Kemba Walker's 10th game this season of 30 or more points. That puts him third place in the Eastern Conference for that. And so I don't know if that's a good stat to get you going, but if you haven't been voting for Kemba Walker yet for NBA All-Star, what are you doing? What are you doing? What more can you want from Kemba in order to quote him again? So every single day, you guys, you have 4 different ways to vote. It's NBA.com/vote, the NBA app. You can do Google search or the Google Assistant, and you can vote those 4 ways every single day up until January 21st. I know I've been voting every day. What about you?
I've been voting every day, too. I got 7 kids, 5 kids, 7 people in my household. We've got 7 votes every day on multiple platforms. So
voting.
If Kemba doesn't get in, the Rochinski family is getting the job done, I'm telling you.
There you go.
Now.
Yeah, no, we got to get him in. 3-time All-Star. Let's make him that 3-time All-Star. You know what? In my opinion, I think if there weren't broadcasters, if there weren't players that could make the NBA All-Star game, I would nominate him as an All-Star for our franchise. Steve Martin, what a great segue, huh? That was a perfect segue.
Yes, I mean, and he is. He's a great broadcaster and a classic one. One was here for 30 years. Obviously, we're honoring him tonight. It would have been nice to see him call the All-Star game. I'm sure he would have loved it. But, you know, Steve has done some amazing things for this place. I'm overjoyed to see him here tonight. I know we gave him a nice little send-off last year at the end of the season, but to have him back, he's in great spirits, still coming to games, loves to hang out. It's just going to be good to see Steve out here tonight.
Yeah, I'm really excited. You guys are going to get a chance to see him being honored at halftime. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, you can still get here. Still early doors. Make sure to get here early. And earlier this week, Matt had a chance to catch up with Steve Martin on what it means to have an honored game for him tonight.
I'm Matt Rochinski for Hornets.com, joined by Hornets legendary broadcaster Steve Martin. Haven't had a chance to work with Steve in a little while. Exciting to be here with you, Steve.
Well, thank you.
First off, we are 26 games into the NBA season. You have not called 26 NBA Hornets games right now. How tough has this been? Exactly.
No, really, it's been good. I left at the right time. Which is what you're supposed to do, really, to tell you the truth. There are only 2 ways to go. Either you leave when you want to or you leave when they want you to. So the former was the better way to go. I knew it was time. 30 years in the NBA is enough, and there's another life thereafter, and it's time that I went and searched out for that.
Now, we've seen you here at games. That you're still coming out to Hornets games, still a huge Hornets fan, always will be, I assume. What has it been like to be back at games?
Well, you know, it's pretty hard to go 90 games a season and then all of a sudden just go cold turkey and don't do it. So I've been just kind of nursing my way away from it, but not too bad. I don't want to get too far away from it because it's, you know, when it's in your blood for 30 years, that's it. I mean, it's hard to get it out. So I usually try to get to at least 1 game a week, maybe more if they're home for a long stretch. This stretch coming up here, I'll get a game or 2 in. So I enjoy watching them. It's part of your life and not a part of my life that I want to lose.
You got to ask, when you're sitting in the stands or sitting up in the suite watching, are you kind of mumbling to yourself or talking to the person next to you?
Well, only when there's a last-second basket, or if you beat the shot clock or something like that, I'd like to call that. I still like to do that. There are aspects of the job, I think, really that you never walk away from. You can't walk away from because it's part of your livelihood. It's in your blood, I guess. And when you're in this business, you're always working for that call of the year, call of the century, and hope you have another one in another week.
What is it like to you to listen to Chris Kroeger? I know that you have given him some advice. He's come to you. How is that relationship, and what have you heard from him?
Well, Chris hasn't needed much of my advice. He came ready to play. I've been impressed with Chris's work. He worked with us on the sidelines and was always ready, and I think that's probably one of the, you know, when you say, well, what do I need to do this job? Well, you need to talk quickly if you're on radio, and the only thing you need to do is beat the crowd when the hoop is good, and that's always been a thing of mine. And economy of words is great, and Chris has got all of that down. So he didn't need to be coached in any way, and I knew he was the right man for the job anyway coming in. He has that type of attitude or makeup that. And working talk radio as he had, you've got to think on your feet, and it's just as demanding as play-by-play, if not more so. because it's strange to say, but when you're doing a talk show, you actually have to sound like you know something. When you're doing play-by-play, you're building an excitement point, and really, when you get to that big point, it doesn't matter because nobody can hear you at that point because the crowd is so loud. But so Chris has been well trained for this job, self-trained, and there wasn't much. It was just open the package, pour water on it, and let it go.
All right, so we haven't heard from you much. What's your breakdown of this Hornets team so far this season under head coach James Borrego?
I think Coach Borrego has done a great job with this unit, and it's a situation where you haven't really changed the makeup of the club dramatically. You have benefited, I think, really from a very good draft. Also, the introduction of Tony Parker into this group has been tremendous. It's done wonders. It's done wonders for Kemba Walker, and that's why he's having the season that he's had. Although we always knew it was, he's had to carry this club for so long, and now he's got an awful lot of help. And Jeremy Lamb has come on great. I like to see also the strides of Cody Zeller, much more consistent. There was the first half he scored like 5 straight baskets, 5 out of 6, and kept his club afloat as they were looking for a lineup that would work against a very good team. So those are the things that you've looked for Cody Zeller to do, and he's doing them.
All right, last thing we got to ask you about behind us. December 28th.
Oh, boy.
Steve Martin night. The Hornets have started doing this last year with honoring people on different nights. They had the 30th anniversary team in here earlier this year. Muggsy Bogues was on December 14th. Steve Martin, December 28th. What does that mean to you to know that this team not only honored you the way they did last year, but are giving you a night this year?
Well, it is overwhelming, really, and I'm very humble about it. I try to be anyway. You're sitting there and you've got to think about it. You're going to have a bobblehead that actually, speaks. And so it's amazing. It's a great honor. I'm honored beyond words, although I'm saying them in the meantime. But at 30 years, it is quite an achievement. I didn't expect this, but it's been a lot of fun.
Well, you deserve every honor that you get. You're equally as important to this organization as a lot of players that have taken that court. On December 28th, make sure to get out here for Steve Martin night. Grab that bobblehead. For Steve Martin, I'm Matt Raczynski with Hornets.com.
Because we're honoring the voice of the Hornets tonight, we thought it was only fitting that we brought on the current voice of the Hornets, Chris Kroeger, our radio broadcaster. Chris, thanks for being here.
It's good to see you. Happy game day.
Happy game day. And you just came back from being on the road these last couple of games. We'll briefly talk about them. Loss against Boston and then the Nets on Wednesday. Give us your take, starting with Boston.
Well, I think Boston was a game that kind of started on tenuous terms. Hornets were down 9-0, and then they score 18 of the next 27, tied at 18, tied at 25. Kemba and Kyrie were going back and forth, and you thought, all right, buckle up. This is going to be a fun Sunday game going into Christmas. And then second and third quarters, the Hornets just kind of lost their way defensively, and that was it. And so that was a tough loss. Boston was at full strength. They had a players-only meeting on Friday before the game, so they had an urgency the Hornets couldn't match. And then, man, Wednesday night, what a game. What you talk about from the 8:37 mark, I believe, on in the third quarter, the game was within 2 possessions the rest of the way. Of course, it goes to double overtime, and the Hornets came up short. But if you had no rooting interest, it was probably a fun game to watch, which is why I think LeBron was tweeting about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, LeBron tweeted it, said it was a really fun game. But you being there, being at Barclays Center, when you were watching that game, those 2 overtimes, what was going through your head?
I was just dying and living with every single possession. It just looked like how many times the Hornets got up 8 with about 4 minutes to go. Kemba hit those 2 consecutive threes, same spot on the court on that right wing, and you thought, all right, the Hornets are going to close it out. Kemba was shimmying on the court. It just kind of felt like it was coming, and then you go to overtime, and then you have a chance in the first overtime, then in the second overtime to get a game-winning shot, and it just didn't happen. And so, I know Coach always talks about you try to learn lessons. It's better to learn lessons in wins than in losses, but that's when you're going to have to learn from in a loss. But it was a wild, exciting game, and I think overall the Hornets did execute offensively. It's just some of those miscues at the free throw line, defensively, on some closeouts, Kemba, Tony, Nick Batum on the lane violation. All those are things you're going to have to clean up.
33 games into the season, is that the most fun you've had calling a game to kind of keep that energy up that long?
Yeah, no, it was taxing, and I was by myself. Matt doesn't travel with me all the time on the road, and so we got to the end of the fourth quarter, and I thought, man, we need to hit a commercial break fast. So it was fun, but that's I think the joy of this job, and I've realized it 33 games in. You live and die with every possession, just the way the fans do, and players do, and coaches do, and you're that vehicle to relaying what's going on. And I can't tell you how many people had tweeting me on Wednesday night after the game saying, man, I couldn't leave my car, or I wasn't able to watch, but man, you did just such a great job of trying to portray what was happening out there. And so that's what I try to do. I'm not perfect, I'm going to mess up, but Steve did such a great job of that. And yeah, it's an important thing to try to bring that energy and relay it through the radio to people.
It sounds crazy to say only 33 games in. You've only broadcast 33
wild,
games
right?
for this team, but you've been doing a tremendous job. What has been the most surprising thing for you as you've started to travel and started to call these games as a broadcaster?
You really, and I knew this would be the case, but you really feel like part of the team, and our coaching staff does a great job of making me feel like part of the team. And so I'm not as important as a front office person or a player or a coach. I realize that, but I do have a job in trying to shape our message, right, and bring our team to our fans. And so that's been the thing, I think, that even more than I realized and thought it would be, I think has been something that's been wild. And you really get a feel for what's going on game to game. You start to get in a rhythm, and when we lose, and we've had 3 days between games sometimes, you're just ready to get on the court, and Steve gave me all sorts of advice throughout the summer, and one of the biggest pieces of advice he gave me was, when you lose, it's going to hurt, but just go on to your prep for the next game. And it's been 100% the best advice I've gotten. So after a tough loss, I immediately look ahead to the next game, and that's what our coaches do, and as a broadcaster, I've got to do that too.
Now, earlier on this season, you were telling us that you're kind of you lost track of the days after a while. Instead of going like
hotel rooms, all that.
Hotel rooms, forgetting what city you're in and everything. Have you gotten a little more acclimated to that?
A little bit, but we have not traveled all that much yet. So we go on an 11-day road trip out west coming up in about a week, and that's going to be, I think that's going to be a true test of character. I'll tell you this story. I was in a elevator in Philadelphia. I don't remember what city it was, and this is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I went out and got lunch. It was the second night of a back-to-back, and Tony Parker's in the elevator, and he says, "What floor?" And I said, "I don't know." And then he said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." I said, ninth floor. He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, I'm room 917, 9th floor. That's where I need to be." And he said, "You don't look good." I said, "Tony, I've never traveled like this before. I'm a rookie. You've been doing this 17 years. So imagine that. If you're a player, you've been doing this for 15, 16, 17 years. You've been to a lot of cities, a lot of hotels, all those places probably run together.
So if that's the key, have you asked Tony or asked any of the guys who have been doing this and who are seasoned vets any advice on how to adjust to your sleep, how to get the right nutrition in?
You've got to force yourself, I think, to stay in a routine. I did it yesterday. We actually got back late on Thursday morning, Wednesday night after that game from Brooklyn, and I probably was asleep at 3 a.m. by the time I got in. And what you have to do is you got to get sleep. You can't wake up at 6 or 7. But I slept until I think about 8, got up, had some coffee, did some prep work, and then went and got a workout in. And you've got to force your body to be as close to a normal routine. And I will say our new coaching staff and our new medical staff led by Joe Sharp, they're very intentional, and they pay attention to keeping your body in a normal routine. So oftentimes when we fly out, instead of flying out right after the game, if we have a day off between games, we'll stay in the city and then we'll fly out the next day. And I've realized that really does keep your body in a normal routine, because more than anything, if your body feels great, I think your mind will kind of follow with that.
All of us who work in this business, it's not only how we adjust, it's how our families adjust
that's the
to
hard
this
part.
business too. For your wife, you got an 11-game trip coming up. Have you, kind of settled everything down, make sure she's aware that she's not going to see you for a little while?
Yeah, we took care of the honey-do list a little bit yesterday. Went and got dinner, and yeah, that's been the biggest adjustment. But we talk a lot. We try to talk when I'm on the road. I call her. My pregame routine is I try to call her, even if it's only for a couple minutes, right before I go on the air, and just say, "I'm going on the air. Hopefully you listen." And
fingers crossed.
And so I just like to check in, and I always send her our itinerary, so she's got an idea of what's going on. I think that's helpful. But yeah, that's been the biggest, I think, learning curve is, your friends and your family and your loved ones, you just don't see them for stretches at a time. And when you do come back, sometimes you need a little time to decompress and kind of get back to your old self. So that's been a big adjustment.
When you sit here and you go, I've done this for 33 games now, I'm adjusting, figuring all this out. To look at what Steve Martin did for 30
years.
30 years.
Well, and 50 years in broadcasting, too. Steve was telling me just the other day, too, he started in broadcasting. He knew in middle school. Remember those career tests you used to take in middle school? Oh, I like doing X, I like doing Y, I like doing Z, and they'd print it out and say, you should be a high school janitor. Sure, right? But with Steve, he filled it out, and it said broadcaster.
Right.
He knew right then and there he wanted to be a broadcaster.
Wow.
And so everything he did in middle school and high school was all about how do I get into broadcasting. He was working at a radio station in high school, and then he went to college at the University of Maine and kept doing some of that stuff. So it's wild. Steve's been doing this from his teenage years, and that's why he was able to hit those benchmarks. He said he knew all along, I want to get to 30 years in the NBA, 50 years in broadcasting. He hit those marks.
Crazy.
Now, over these last 30 years, looking back and seeing all of the legendary moments and having his voice attached to it, aside from this one that's on the bobblehead, the playoffs and clinching that series, what are some other things that you remember and some other broadcast moments of Steve that you might remember?
I just think the biggest reason, we're honoring Steve tonight is if you try this exercise, right, think of every major, meaningful, seminal moment in our organization's history, and that includes the Bobcats too. Can you think of a moment that Steve's voice is not attached to?
No.
True.
And so he's been with us for every single iteration of Hornets basketball, whether it's the original run, he went with the team to New Orleans, and then as soon as the Bobcats came into existence, came right back, and then he switched over with the Hornets too, and he's done TV, he's done radio, and he switched back and forth over the years. He was even a PA announcer for a little bit. So, Steve has done basically every major job in this organization, and I can't think of a Hornets memory that's not attached to Steve Martin. And I don't know how many teams you could say this about, but as we celebrate 30 years of our existence, Steve is every bit as important in shaping our organization as a player, as a coach, as a GM, any front office executive. And that's rare to say a broadcaster
Absolutely.
shaped an organization, but that's not hyperbole. That's what Steve did.
No, it's great.
Yeah, and that's really great to see. Looking forward to tonight. Do you have anything up your sleeve for the broadcast for Steve?
Steve's supposed to join us in the third quarter.
Okay.
So we'll bring the whole crew together. It'll be me and Stevie and Matt. I know he's in retirement, but I might force him to do a little play-by-play. And
He's probably going to love that.
I think he will. And if we're winning, I don't know, I might just kick my feet up on the desk and don't play with house money, right?
There you go. Fourth quarter, take it away.
Yeah, hopefully.
Post game, go for it.
Yeah, maybe we'll get a replay of that call from '93 that's on this bobblehead.
Yep.
Names will be different. It's no Alonzo anymore, but maybe we'll get Kemba, the shot. Good, and maybe we'll beat the Brooklyn Nets and get some revenge tonight.
We will definitely take. I got one more question for you, just because the way things have changed for broadcasters, we've seen it with you this season. It used to be you just call games. You're doing so much more. You've got the podcast. We want to make sure people download that on iTunes on Mondays. Podcast plug for Kroeger. It's a great podcast.
And Steve's our guest this past week.
There you go. We've got Steve
Perfect.
Martin on already. You can go back and listen. Make sure you do that. But you also do the coaches show on the road and here at home with me. How has that kind of changed in broadcasting to become kind of, you're doing a jack of all trades?
Yeah, I just think our job now is you're a content creator. And so I try to, I think it's funny we use the term voice of the Hornets. I'm still not comfortable with that yet. Me and Eric joke all the time. He's the TV voice of the Hornets. I'm the radio voice of the Hornets. But I think when you talk about voice of the team, you're the voice, and that manifests itself in different ways. So it might be play-by-play for 3 hours a night during a game day, but it's also the podcast. It's being available on social media. It's doing the coaches show. So, when I, tried to come up for this job and I interviewed, and it's a who's who of NBA guys and play-by-play broadcasters trying to get a job like this, the one thing I tried to really portray myself is I'm a Charlotte guy. I grew up here with this team. I know this team intimately, and I can be the voice in a variety of ways. And so I think, I'm just so grateful every day that the team took a chance on me, because I think they value that, and I'm excited to be that. So I'm always available 24/7. The voice of your Hornets, Chris Kroeger.
Well, we think you're doing a heck of a job. Let me just say congratulations.
Thank you.
Man. It's been fun working with you, and we can look forward to continue working with you.
It's good to see you guys.
Well, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. We're going to leave you guys with our latest feature of our 30th anniversary series of the Fallen Scoreboard. Do you remember that at the Charlotte Coliseum?
I do. Man, that almost ruined a game day. We actually played that night. How crazy is that? We played that night.
Yeah. Make sure to take a look. Stick around. We're going to close here. Make sure you get here early doors at 5:30 tonight. The first 10,000 of you get one of these bad puppies right here. Make sure to be here. For Kroeger, for Matt and myself, we'll see you guys on New Year's Eve.
That night before the scoreboard fell was a Thursday night. We had dedicated, Dr. Billy Graham had literally been under that scoreboard. We did a in the round sort of opening ceremony, and he dedicated the building. He had dedicated the old Charlotte Coliseum, so it was kind of a highlight for him to come back and dedicate the new Charlotte Coliseum. So on Friday morning, we get there. As I remember it was about 10 after 9 that morning, and I was up in our managing director's office, Steve Camp's office. Our operations manager, Dave Trotter, came up to Steve's office and said, the scoreboard has fallen. So we all rushed down there, and then just opening those curtains into the lower bowl and looking down there and seeing that 40,000 pounds of metal and scrap on a brand new floor that had never been played on was just an amazing sight.
The juxtaposition of all this newness and excitement with, you know, it looked like the lunar module had crashed through the roof and hit the floor.
There's one of the worst moments that you could probably have as a city. But before the day ended, it turned into one of the best moments.
Steve and I and all of our staff kind of really went into the show must go on mood. And Steve called our city manager, Wendell White, and got permission, authority to do whatever he needed for us to be able to play basketball that night.
That very day, there was one of the events that they had planned to ramp up or introduce people to the Coliseum was an international exhibition between a group of top NBA players and a group of college players who were going to be eligible for the NBA draft and whatnot. So it was quite an event. And we were going to have the women's national team come in and play, I think it was the Cuban women in the first game. So it was going to be a doubleheader.
It also said something about what an excitement there was in general about Charlotte. There was this can-do about the whole thing.
In just 7 hours' time, from the time that the scoreboard fell till about 5:30 that afternoon, city people who worked at the Coliseum, the new Coliseum, and also at the old Coliseum, they took the floor out. The scoreboard was removed. The floor was removed because it had pieces of scoreboard still embedded in it. Taken out. They had to clean the floor, the concrete underneath, and then waiting outside. As that all happened, they packed up the floor that was in the old Charlotte Coliseum, brought it across town, laid it on the floor, had that done between the hours of 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. It's probably one of the greatest moments that the city's ever pulled off.
1 million people, it seemed, did whatever they had to do to make sure that that game came off that night, because that was the first athletic event in that building. And I think it was extremely important to people beyond just who worked for the Hornets, for the whole city, to send a message to the nation that we were not going to be daunted by an accident.
Proud to say we opened the doors 30 minutes late that night, but both of those games with those Olympic exhibition teams started on time and played without incident.
And everybody just was so excited about the new, scoreboard. It was so massive, so huge. The city was kind of rampant about it. The organization, Georgia, was pretty proud about that new scoreboard, and here it is. It almost caused catastrophe.
It was crazy. Here they're adjusting the scoreboard, and it falls on the game court, and we still end up playing a game that night.
That was a serious business, not having it secured enough, and then the cost of a scoreboard, to hear it fall. I was like, oh gosh, is this what this first season's going to be like? But we rallied.
Luckily for us, no one got injured in that incident, so that helped us in the process.
One of the practices, or first practices that we had there, we all get together, okay, let's do our stretching, huddle up under at center court, and I'm going like, wait a minute, it happened once, it might happen again,
Every time after that, you go in there and you look up, you just want to make sure, hey, did you get the wires tightened up today? Everything good to go?
We were all kind of apprehensive about this big scoreboard they put up there, and actually due to that, I always stretched off to the side every game of my life after that happened. So just in case if the scoreboard fell.
It was startling. You know, the games were going on here, and it was cool for Charlotte. And then out of the blue, this thing just falls, and it grabbed the attention of everybody in the arena that day, everybody in Charlotte, and around the country.
I don't suggest that other buildings try that, but it really worked out well for us in the face of adversity, how the city of Charlotte really came together and was able to really turn something that really could have been a negative incident into something very positive.